Prepare yourself.
The opinions of the host and guests on this show are exclusively just that, opinions. That means that they shouldn't be the cause of your state of being offended. Why does everybody get so butthurt?
Okay, let's go. Ready, go!
Welcome to And God Created Woman, where the arguments are necessary for the best make-up sex of your life. Unless you're single, and then we suggest you just go fuck yourself.
It'd help if I turn my mic on. All right, guys, And God Created Woman show. We're at a part 2 with Anna Buteau. It's Buteau. I pronounced it correct, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
As close as possible.
Yeah, that's fine.
This is our third conversation.
Third conversation.
First one we had was last week. We had one for your podcast yesterday, which just easily could have gone if our time wasn't limited, well over an hour. And then we're back at it for part 3 today. If you did not get to listen to the first podcast, we talked about, which Anna talked about, really educated me on archetypes, male and female, masculine, feminine archetypes, and then the light and the dark of both. Fantastic. I don't think I love when a guest can just, like, I get a lot of guests who apologize. I didn't mean to talk so much. I'm like, no, if it's a 60-minute podcast and you're talking for 59 minutes, I did my job. I'm happy with that because I'm listening and I want to listen to all this. We left off the last couple podcasts talking more along the lines of the polarization seems to be a theme with a lot of what we do and what you do specifically. And then we got into masculine, female energies a little bit. I brought up sex in the last type of your podcast yesterday, where I talked about how assertive I am and aggressive I am, where I want to get out my truths. And then we had to interrupt the podcast yesterday. If we're going to continue a great talk and a necessary dialogue of men being men, women being women, and masculine and feminine energy, where does your passion lie? Like, do you get people who come to you for counsel, and then all of a sudden you just pounce on the sexual energy, the polarization, the light, the dark, the masculine, feminine? Where do your eyes light up and go, oh, this is what I want to talk about? How does that you normally kick off with you and your level of interest for helping and educating?
Yeah, that's a very intense question.
Yeah, that's what we do here.
I like that. The thing is, I've not been addressing that conversation. It's actually been quite new, especially because I think that right now we have this big trend going on about the actual talk of the masculine energy, the feminine energy, the presence of man, the presence of woman, and everybody's battling who is better and which is righteous and whatever it is. I think the whole thing where I see myself and where I like to kind of come in is more so to remind everybody that without men and women and men, there's no life, there's no creation, there's no nothing. We wouldn't be here, whoever is out there, without both. I think we have to come back to that fundamental truth of we need both to make the world function and move along, as we do also to integrate ourselves, because we hold both energies inside of us as an individual. So yes, I was born physically as a female, and yes, I have more feminine energy predominant, but I still have a masculine energy inside of me. And it's about integrating both and making harmony in them. And until you understand how to harmoniously make them work, this is where I like to challenge the thought, because we hear a lot of, especially I am in the coaching space, I am in the mindset space, or more of the spiritual side of things sometimes. And we hear that, oh, you need to be working from your feminine energy, you need to be less in your masculine, or this is toxic masculine, this is toxic feminine. We're hearing these words, but we don't have quite an image about it. And not only that, it's not because I work more for my masculine that I'm not doing it right either, or if I'm working more from my feminine, that doesn't make it wrong or right either. It's understanding how both integrate in ourselves. And I like to challenge more that thought, because I feel like we're trying to, divide everything. We want to segment and categorize so much, and it limits us as individuals, as multi-dimensional people. And that's where I like to, start off.
Can we start by defining? I know that one of the biggest things now is defining what a woman is, what a man is. Can we start with the definition of energies? What does it mean having masculine energy and feminine energy? What is it? How do you like? Everyone thinks that I have this massive, huge alpha, sigma, male energy. They don't know behind the scenes that I'm an emotional guy, and I like, I think I joked about it the other day, but I wasn't joking. Like, if there's a Nicholas Sparks film that comes on, I'll be like, oh yeah, I've seen The Notebook quite a few times. I like that shit. But am I still a man if I tap into my feminine energy?
Well, that's the thing. That's what I'm talking about. It's about like understanding that we're all of it, and that it doesn't because I like to ask the question to the people instead of me answering that question of, what is it for you being masculine? And does can a masculine be tender and I would say loving, or whatever it is, like, or vulnerable, or, there's so many words that can be put, but I think it comes down to us asking ourselves the question, what does it mean to be masculine? What does that represent for us? And then we can challenge more about what comes up from each perspective. And like you're saying, I think that's where we've got it wrong in the whole discussion, is about categorizing and saying, well, you're an alpha, then you don't cry and don't watch whatever movies you desire to watch, or you don't like, more, I would say, romantic things or romantic setups or romantic movies or whatever it is. Like, why should one be without the other? Instead of looking at it like we're multifaceted, and everything that's romantic falls on a spectrum. Some people, just getting bonbons and being cuddled is enough. Some people need to have the grand gestures that every fucking buddy needs to know about it, where the 8 billion people on earth needs to know about it. There's people like that. That's for them what a romantic gesture is. Some, it's just holding a fucking door. We have to understand where we stand in every aspect of it, and not only that, not judge anybody from that viewpoint also.
Whereas I every time this conversation comes up, I think of a specific person who does something that I wonder the dangers of the polarity, right? The going too far one way or the other. I didn't grow up so much in the era of men are men, you don't cry, this and that. I've talked about it on your podcast show. I didn't come from a very affectionate household, but you cried when it was need be, right? There's the time we're at now, men can't be men. And, what is it? Feminism is key, and toxic masculinity, all this. And there's a martial arts teacher who's very famous. I don't know which coast he's on, but there was a video he had that went viral a couple years ago of he's working with children. Mostly,
I know who it is.
Jason is his first name.
Yeah, exactly. I know who it is.
So let me ask you this question, because this was my initial gut reaction. I loved what he did. For those who haven't seen it, he works predominantly with black males because he's a black man, and he wants to cultivate the good community culture, because there's obviously a fatherless issue in the family. But they're going to break a board, and the young martial artist can't break the board. So he starts to cry, and he's got this overwhelming feeling of crying because it hurts, it's painful, it's frustrating, and the sensei or sifu, however you address in that specific martial art, was encouraging him, it's okay. And you're allowed to feel this frustration. I immediately resonated with that because I lost a wrestling match when I was 17, and I was so frustrated. I ran into the bathroom. I wasn't pinned. I was the ref was blind, all this shit, and I was overwhelmingly crying. I couldn't control it because I was pissed and I was angry and I was purging. I was a wrestler, for the love of God. So I got that part of it. Fast forward, Jason gets this notoriety. He's on talk shows and all this and whatnot. Then you start to see a theme in the pattern. the boys who were on his school, a lot of them started to cry. And I started to tell myself, well, wait a second, were they getting positive male reinforcement on, oh, look, if I cry, Sensei will show me more attention and I'll make it to a viral video? And I started to think the opposite of this was good. All of a sudden, now this may create dangers of soft men, because now these boys are saying, okay, the world is praising the one boy who cried and how strong he was. So now it's my turn to go up and kick and break the board. I'm going to purposely cry. And I thought, man, there's got to be damage on that because we're featuring it. Are we doing too much damage by showing to the world our private sides instead of cultivating them behind the scenes? Or did what I said, was that just a load of shit and I'm unempathetic and I'm reading way too much into it?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a great question and it's a great conversation to talk about, because we have to remind ourselves that the clip that was shown was only just a tiny clip. We don't have the whole scene, the before and after of that sequence. We don't know exactly everything that goes on through that class. I've personally heard that man talk so much and I follow that man. I think what he does is a great job, and in many ways, but the talk that he actually does with that kid during that clip is much more powerful than the actual thing that the little kid cries. I think this is where having the space to be emotionally being able to express. So you talked about how everything was repressed for you. Well, I grew up also being repressed in my own emotions and intensities. So I was brought up like big girls don't cry. I wrote even a piece about that. And many women do resonate with that, where women need to be a certain way, appear a certain way, talk a certain way, dress a certain way. And especially now, I think what we're so much promoting are extremes, instead of, the middle. Mm-hmm. And yes, to be mindful, I think when we come across, I would say, much content. Another place where I like to, challenge my own idea behind it is the podcast the podcast known as Man Enough. They have really great conversations on there, and they're actually quite interesting conversations. And even to challenge someone's perspective, especially on the side of men and vulnerability, or being a man or not being a man, or whatever that conversation may go around, you can really challenge your own perspective in that. But I think we have to remind ourselves that sometimes what we see is only just a fraction of something, and then we cannot assume everything from there. And I think this is where we sometimes need to just be mindful of what we consume as content in general, regardless of the topic.
That's what I was worried on. That was, are we now seeing, oh, look, the praise comes from being ultra sensitive. For me, it resonated with, shit, I was that kid in my 20s. Yeah. I was the John Cusack who stood outside in the rain with the boombox playing In Your Eyes, hoping the girl would wind up, and it never worked, right? It was women lost respect for me, lost attraction. I didn't understand it. I saw the damage it did, the showing emotion all the time. I still show emotion all the time, but putting all of my eggs in the basket of, I'm supposed to be vulnerable and I'm supposed to show all this emotion and whatnot. That's the fear I got from seeing these clips featured, because again, we saw it out of context. So we didn't have a balance. We had polarization, which could play a part into the feminization of men, saying, see, look, true men they're always like this. That's not the case. That's not the case at all. So I would just wonder how much damage social media does for us finding a personal balance of, yeah, it's great to cry when you need to, and it's great to be strong and stoic when you need to too. And then how do we find our way with it?
I think it's by having more discussions about it. And not only that, being more, I would say, mindful when we do share, I think, certain clips or certain things, and sometimes just add your little intake of going more profound in the discussion or into the share. I like to do that. Sometimes I'll share a post and just add a little more profoundness to what the actual saying is. Now, does this work like we talked about it yesterday on my podcast, where we don't have control of how people take in the information, and we cannot have control how people are gonna assume or presume or whatever you want to say. It comes down at some point that I think the bigger, broader education is just people to stop and reflect and then respond to whatever piece of information they did. And unfortunately, our social media, I think, has pushed the idea of more reaction than actual response in the content that we consume and then reshare and keep pushing. I think why we see so much division, if we look just with the conversation of men and women, or even if we look at the politics, or if we look at energies, mindset, success, money, regardless of the discussions that we have right now in our societies, they're pushed to extremes because people are more in a reaction mode and wanting to be morally not objective, but more like, I don't know what it is actually. I have a hard time finding the words around that. But I think that's what happens, is more people are more reacting instead of just sitting back and challenge their own thoughts, challenge maybe what they think about what they saw. We don't do that as much. And I think that's the broader education we need to address and talk about more.
How are we dealing with this going forward as a species that is evolving, where we're not primal, right? I like to think that if you know the power went out tomorrow and nobody had cell phones and nobody had this and that whole masculine feminine energy thing would kind of go out the window, because it would be then survival of the fittest, and it would be based on biological innate attraction of women saying, all right, biggest, strongest male who's going to provide me with the biggest, strongest seed. And you'd go back to that type of attraction and mentality.
Just as men would do this the exact same way.
So how are we doing damage with being more social and being more open and talking more about our energies? Or is there a part of us that just should let our primal side do more of the talking, so to speak?
It's a good question, actually. I think we have to be a little bit in touch with a little bit of everything. I think that sometimes coming back to our primal, at the end of the day, we're animals. We've evolved differently. Doesn't mean that everything needs to go out the window on our primal instincts. I don't think we have to deny that we live in a hierarchical society. We cannot deny that men are men and women are women, and we have to understand the combination and what woman does look into a man and what man looks into a woman, and understanding that dynamic at broader scale, regardless if it's primal or more up or high level, the way you want to look at it. But I think there's a bigger conversation about accepting that we actually do have certain standards towards the other sex, and what we're looking into a mate or not a mate, or how we want to survive. There's a bigger conversation to have with ourselves, and having that honest conversation with us. That's where I'm leaning towards about that question. But not denying the primal instincts of, you know what, if everything goes out the window about our civilization tomorrow morning, are you able to go out there in the wild and survive?
That's what I'm wondering. That's what I'm wondering about, which is the 51% versus 49% that's more beneficial. Is it more beneficial to come to the beginning of a relationship and be, all right, let's talk the cerebral aspect. Let's get in each other's heads first. And then once that line is crossed and we've established and we're connected, now the vulnerability is the primal side that comes out. And then I'm going to continue to pressure test the relationship to see if my partner or myself can go back into the reptilian brain of myself. Or is that the adverse, where it's like, all right, this is me, eat, sleep, fuck, conquer. And then we establish, now let's get into the vulnerable and the cerebral side of me. I don't know which formula is, air quotes, correct.
I think the formula is to go all in with everything. It's to come in to regardless of like even friendships, come in with the emotional side, come in with the intellectual side, come in with the spiritual side, come in with the physical side. Come in with standards, come in with what I'm here to be and create, and what are you here to be and create also. If we understand that everything is a two-way street and we come with everything at the table and lay everything out, what is it to, then the other person can decide, and vice versa. I think that's the idea. So being vulnerable, one, in the beginning, but also show strength in the beginning and show emotions and create the safe space to discuss and communicate. And like, there's so many things. Now, I'm not saying we're fucking perfect in that sense. And it's, that's the point of that, bringing everything to the fucking table. I think it's also being honest of saying, hey, for me in my relationship, I have trouble speaking out when things are wrong, or I feel more, I would say, whatever, it's anger or sadness or the side, like whatever it is, like all the negative emotions, I have a tougher time to speak because I didn't grow up in a house where discussions of my emotions were
is that
done.
fear of judgment? Is it personally for you? Is that fear of judgment and then not being accepted because that side of you is not supposed to come out, or is that you just don't know how to articulate it?
It's a little bit of everything. But the main thing is, because when I was young, every time I would come up to speak about my emotions, I was shut out. And I've lived that many years on with other people, whether it's in friendships or in relationships, but primarily with my father, I was shut out. So like, I was the girl, like, yeah, I was intense. I was all over the place. I was adventurous. I was asking questions. I was the weird kid, or I don't know.
How did that translate into your formula for success versus disaster in choosing a partner? Did you choose a man who was just like him, and that worked or didn't work? Or did you choose a man who was just like him and there wasn't just like him and that worked or didn't work?
Well, right now in my life, I had two big relationships, and now I'm in a new third big relationship. So I didn't have much, I would say, quote unquote, experience. But the first two men were more on the same side of shutting me out. But then I've been doing some work, and now I've met a man with who we have established to be able to have that safe space for me, and like have a safe space for him also in that aspect. But that was the first thing I told him in the day one. I have a hard time speaking. Sometimes you'll have to fish it out. Sometimes you'll have to ask me. Sometimes you'll have to badger me. And yes, it's going to come out messy, and sometimes it's going to be awful. And sometimes it's just going to be like, you're going to question my sanity probably in there, but that's the thing. But then when that happened, when my behavior in the beginning was fine, but then at some point as the relationship moved forward, I was starting having the behavior shutting down, of not speaking up. And then it's like, he confronted me first on and says, you told me this was your problem. Now you're doing it.
So I want to break this down step by step. How subconsciously attractive did you find that when he did that?
Actually, it was, first and foremost, it's very confronting because you're not used to that new behavior. But the thing is, that was exactly what I wanted. Mm-hmm. That is exactly what I was working to attract in my life. This is what exactly I was also doing as my internal work as an individual for myself, because it all starts with us. So I've created my space, but I needed a space in the external, but to be able to attract that. But it was confronting, but it was the best confronting in my life, probably. And
did it get to the point where that's you now find safety, you find strength in a male for that?
I still there's still challenges. Like, it doesn't, things like that, especially something that's been embedded in me for 30 years. It's hard to, unprogram something as hard as it is.
Yeah, it is. Is he vulnerable, or was there a time where you got to the point? Because this is a glaring problem with men and women. And I want your view on it, because I know this firsthand. I grew up in a household where my parents never showed affection, but my mother would give my father slight offhanded comments, and that was their way of joking and communication, but we didn't know that, right? And he never put his foot down. He worked his ass off all the time. My mother ran the household. I'll never forget, I was 25 and I was dating a girl, and we're on our way to her parents for like Christmas or something. And as we're driving, she's putting on makeup in the rearview mirror, and she says, "Try not to be yourself at my parents today." And my heart skipped a beat because I went, oh my God, she loves me. Because that's something my mother would have said to my father. And I took that as, if a woman is so comfortable to say that to me and not give a shit about my reaction, that means she knows exactly who I am and she loves me. I was in very, very, very destructive relationships like that for a long time. Polarizing, when I got into my late 30s, the masculine side came out to where I stopped putting people on pedestals, and I was the alpha. The problem with that is when I mixed in the balance and the softer, more gentler side of me came out, women immediately lost attraction because, wait a minute, you're quiet, you cry, you this, you that. Oh, yeah, that's who I am. So my question to you is, when you find this, the man who is saying, we need to speak, talk, all right, he's almost badgering you to get that out. And then you see the masculine side of a man who aggressively wants it out. The day that he wound up, or if it hasn't happened yet, wound up being vulnerable and emotional, did that take you off guard? Or did you go, wait a minute, you're not supposed to cry here. That's not masculine. Or how did it affect you? Or was it a fear of yours? When the two
so that's where people get mixed up, because my man has shown vulnerability with me in our relationship, and we have to understand that when that happens, you have to give that support. So it's about us female to lean onto our masculine energy to hold his feminine energy in that moment, and then rebalance it. It always balanced that. And I try to work with that with my own son. So I have a almost 10-year-old now. And he unfortunately didn't have a great model about expressing his emotions. And I'm very aware of that. And right now, as I'm speaking, I'm working directly with my son, taking some time specifically so he can learn more about speaking about his emotions. So I have to lean into my masculine energy for that, because the actual, in broad, little thing, masculine is kind of the recipient. The feminine is like the energy, like it's this giving and take kind of energy anyways, but it's understanding when to hold space. Masculine energy, that is something that's from that energy. So I have to learn to, when that happens, I have to polarize it so he can express it in a safe way. Regardless if it's my son or even friends, like male friends, I sometimes lean into my masculine for my male friends. And sometimes I do that also for my female friends, as the same way as they do when I am in need. Also, they have to lean into their masculine energy for that, regardless if they're female or male. And it's about understanding that. And it didn't caught me off guard at all. There was no, I think there could be maybe an extreme that could happen, that where I'm like, well, wait a minute. If it would be very like intense and heavy and very negative, like sometimes people can go there and I think it's fine. But if it would be frequent, then that would be maybe my limits. But when somebody expresses vulnerability, I'm actually very open and forward of just leaning into my masculine in that space. And it's about, understanding that polarity and balance, like understanding where the foot you play. And I think this is where people have a hard time, because then what happens is, if you block trying to come into your masculine or feminine energy, like my problem is I don't lean as much into my feminine energy, especially speaking about my emotions or whatever. So I have to learn to lean more in my feminine in those moments and learn to be more like myself, be more vulnerable. So that's the thing. So I've been more into my masculine most of my time in general. So there's a learning for myself to be there, but to also because for me, that's natural to just lean into my masculine more often than not. So it's about understanding that when that happens, I have to be very understanding and very like, you know what, he has his need. I need to be that, I need to lean into that energy and let that happen. So I was not taking off guard at all.
Then it's frequency is what you're saying. Because it blows me away as you're talking. I'm thinking about, one of the biggest complaints that women have now is they don't want to raise a son as a partner. Right. But then I think about men, I've talked about it openly saying, all right, as men, we're supposed to be boyfriends, husbands, and fathers to our women, because women can revert back into that little brat girl that, they need that discipline. There's a sexual arousal almost to know that I'm safe with this man who's like a father figure. And I'm going, all right, that's our job as men. But wait a minute. For us men, when we leave our mothers, who was that person that we could go to for the mothering, who do we have? Who do we have? We can't use, but again, too, I guess I'm answering my own question. You see a dumbed down male today, video games, lazy, fat.
That doesn't take care of themselves.
Right. So they're going to constantly need a mom. And I guess, so you answered the question with frequency. But on both sides too, you get all these women who just see a ton of I don't want to bring politics in this, but liberal, effeminate men out there, and then ultra conservative men on the other side. And both sides are tired of both of them because there's no balance. I guess it does boil down to frequency, as you said, if a guy's going to be crying nonstop. And I've had my days. I've had my days where I'm so emotional because it's like a purge. Can't find anybody. I'm a hopeless romantic. Then I'm in my 30s. I date someone and the floodgates come out and it's just nonstop, John Barry music, thematic scores, and, oh, I love you. And let me just shower you with, shut the fuck up. Be a man. I didn't know how to switch that on and off back then. And then now, in my late 40s, I'm at the point where I'm so in my masculine that a lot of women are like, well, do you ever get vulnerable at this current time? No, I don't, because I know where that could lead me. So I'm still discovering balance at this late age.
There's a great question to ask ourselves, like, what does it mean to be vulnerable?
Oh, safe. I want to feel safe, right? So, and we talked about this briefly on yours yesterday. If a woman is interested in me, I'm going to come out with, this is my faith, this is my politics, this is my sexual kink and my deviancy. We start there. And if I know that you don't judge me on any one of those, right? And I'm always going to base it on a comment. Like, I want to hear, oh, you're a Christian. Oh, you're in the swing lifestyle. Oh, you're in this. If I hear how you answer the question, that immediately determines whether or not I take it to the next step. If you even have a remote of a judgment in your voice, no, I'm not safe with you. Then I can't be masculine, go conquer the world, come home and say, I'm so tired. I just want to lay my head in your lap. I had a woman who was like that. The last relationship I was in, I was extremely in my masculine, and we were having a conversation. It was very alpha female, very strong, properly submissive, which is willing submission. I don't like forced submission at all. Very aggressive. And we were both doing something on our social medias in the same room together. And I say whatever I feel in the moment. And I remember putting my phone down. I looked at her, I said, if anything ever happened to you, like if you died, if you got in a car accident, it would destroy me. That immediately ended our relationship. Immediately. 24 hours later, the relationship was done. And I'm sure there was other rooting circumstances, but she said, what? No. I told you. I don't want a weak man. What do you mean it would destroy you if something happened to me? That's weakness. So I was not safe in that relationship. And I'm glad I saw it now, or then at that point, versus years later. But it's up to me to communicate in the beginning. Listen, I can cry at the drop of a hat. I can go conquer the world. There are many different sides of me. I need to know if you accept a man as a man. If I hear a woman give a remote judgment, oh, men can't cry, they're not bitches, I can't continue with you. So it does go on to communication. Yeah,
it goes on with communication, but there's also acceptance that we're fucking humans at the end of the day, regardless of gender, regardless if you're a woman or a man. I guess if women, we're not like a fucking roller coaster with our emotions. We are. And it's even biologically explained. But at the end of like it's denying, like when we deny aspects of intensity or extremes or whatever it is, like in that moment you felt like that. It's funny how we don't question more about when somebody says something like that. Like I don't know, we have to question more instead of judging. I think because you said that to that woman, maybe that didn't mean that the next day that would be the same fucking speech. In that moment you felt like that because in that moment that person was probably a lot for you. Like I think it's so much, like we have to stop taking and reacting to just a statement.
Well, all behavior has meaning. So I'm smart enough to know that when I said, and just in that circumstance, when I had said, if anything happened to you, it would destroy me, that put pressure on her, because then it forces the other human being to say, I have to rise up to meet what this man's level of standards is in his eyes, which made me realize how many times has a woman complimented me on something and I brushed off the compliment. Oh, no, you're such a handsome man. Oh, you're blind. And I'm, wait a minute, why am I saying that? Why am I saying that instead of saying I thank you? Is it that I feel pressure that somebody paid me a compliment? Now all of a sudden I have to demand more of myself to keep improving. All behavior has meaning, we have to start recognizing that.
Yeah, exactly. But imagine if we go to that, if we take that moment in your life where that woman would just say, well, why are you saying that? Where this comes from? How would then you would have spoken up and then probably elaborate a little bit more about that statement. She'll be more equipped of saying, hey, like, I feel this intensity with what you share. Like, I feel it puts a lot of maybe pressure on my shoulders. I don't want to be somebody who holds that, like communication. And we've lost that. And I know I'm not the best at it. I know I'm working on it constantly because we weren't brought up to communicate. I didn't see my parents communicate. Actually, I saw them fight most of the time, or not even speaking, or, I saw my parents got divorced. I was 6 years old, and it was an awful divorce. And so I don't have a great role model about that. But now being today in a relationship where I finally have a space where I can learn to communicate better, I can learn to be more, I would say, responsive, to be more listening when something does show up. And like my man is he's very upfront. He's very direct. He's very, I love that man. I like because he understands his energies really clearly. He understands the balance of it and how to harmonize it. He was able to get there in his life. And I'm very proud and happy to be with a man like that. And also, we're both helping each other on our journey to be better people. And it's when you get to that point of now experiencing something completely off, like it's different. Now, are we going to be in each other's lives forever? I don't fucking know. And he doesn't know. And we don't work at it like that. We don't amplify things that are trivial and unmeaningful. We work on meaning, and today is today. Today, I choose you to be part of my life and share with you. And not only that, now I can also share that with my son. And what has been more even prolific is that my ex, which is the father of my son, he's in a really good relationship with a woman, and we get along all together, which is so cool. And so my son is finally seeing and the thing is, like, healthy and unhealthy things. So he gets a little bit of everything, and he can make his own, sense of everything, and now creating more space. So he's more, we're opening up like even my boyfriend, he's really giving my son space to speak up and to be vulnerable and to be also a man. So he sees like really all energies. I feel very blessed about that. And I think this is what we should show. And I think could almost be common.
Let me ask you a question as far as, I have a different point of view on that. I won't date somebody unless the intention is, even if it's on paper, marriage, commitment, full commitment. We're at a day and age now where I love, like I said, Leo Buscaglia, one of my favorite authors, favorite speakers, back in the 1970s, had said the average relationship was 3 months. And we know today's day and age, it's so much easier to replace.
It would probably be a week.
Yeah,
monkey. Or a couple of days.
Yeah, what's it called? Monkey branching, where you're on to the next race.
I don't know.
Well,
the term.
so my question is,
that's not my thing.
What is more? Explain the difference. I can picture it being freeing as a woman with no pressure. If you're with a man who is like, I don't know what the future holds, I choose you today. Right? That's no pressure. That's good. That's free for you to flourish as a flower, all that. Or do you want a man who is, no, my intention with you is to stay with you, to commit to you, to marry you. That's my intention, so that now you can still be you. You're still the same flower that's blooming, but now you've got a wall around you so the rabbits won't come and chew you up and you're protected. So which is more powerful for you?
The thing is, for me, either way, there needs to be a commitment. So for me, everything is about commitment. I wouldn't commit with somebody who's like, yeah, we see each other, but that's all. No, I want to know I'm your woman, you're my man. And yes, we talk about the future. It's not because we don't talk about the future. We do, but we don't want to, we talk about it. We affirm it that yes, right now we can see each other for many years, but that doesn't mean that tomorrow, everything can shift tomorrow for whatever reason. And it's the idea that it's all possibilities and every day we get to choose, but there's still the commitment of saying I'm here for you and I'm going to be there for you regardless. And I think that is the actual conversation we need to have, because I believe in marriage. I believe in the institution of marriage very profoundly. I believe in when I commit, I fucking commit. I'm a Taurus. So it's either I don't get half-assed things in my life. It's just the way it is. It's either everything or not at all. So that's how I work. And I think it's more about, what do you commit? Yes, long term, if everything goes as we believe, I want to get married, for example. I believe in the institution of marriage. I talked about it lately with him because we were at a marriage. And I would like to be more I want to get married after a lot of years where a lot of things has happened, where it's like this reaffirming of the commitment we already started in the beginning. So that's how I see it. But commitment, I still committed. I committed. I'm with you. You're with me. You're my man. I'm your woman. And that's what it is. I'm a loyal person. So I think it's more about what is the actual commitment, because I think we've lost the idea of it's because we're not fully expressing the idea. It doesn't mean that there's no commitment.
So it's not a laissez-faire. If we're tomorrow, we're tomorrow. It's a recognition of, listen, I'm committed to you. I love you. I want a life with you. I'm aware that just because we have the best car on the planet doesn't mean there's not going to be potholes in the road. I will properly keep my eyes out and navigate so we keep going forward. So it's just recognition that there are going to be problems, but I'm in this to commit to navigate properly with the problems.
Yeah.
Okay.
But again, I don't want to completely say to you or create the illusion that I will always be there. So the thing is that I think we've got lost with that idea is we create illusions of, we hear people after even 1 week of being in a relationship, she's the woman of my life. Even I feel reticent to say such a statement after such a short period of time. Right now, she may be the one. Will she be the one in a year? Will she be the one in 3 years? Will she be the one in 10 years? Maybe. That's completely possible. But we have to understand that life happens. I could get into a car crash tomorrow morning. What is my man going to do? End his own life because I'm not there anymore? I think
it's far simpler than that, because 2-3 years ago, I would have fought you to tooth and nail on this, right? But you're right. And because I would have used the argument on you, well, every professional athlete or every business mogul or whatever, they don't have, what is it? The easiest way to kill a plan A is to have a plan B, right? So they 100% are focused on, I'm going to be a champion, I'm going to be this, and there's no other option. That is
the backdoor reference is funny because my man posted something about that.
well, the problem is that's almost more of a controllable variable because the common denominator is always going to be you. The common denominator when you're dealing with a relationship is two people.
Yeah.
So now it's not just you and your goals. It's another person who's got their own free will, free thought process, free flowing. So you're not just fighting with the things that come into your life. You're fighting with things that come into their life. So yeah, I would have disagreed with you years ago. Now I agree with you.
But there's a bigger conversation there again, because we talk, like you say, you're very upfront about what are your flaws, what are your takes, what are your deviances or kinks or whatever it is. But do we talk about what is your lifestyle? What is your vision of a couple? What is your vision of your life? What are you actually working on? What are you working to become? What would be your ideal day? What would be your ideal life? What are you wanting to create? What are you about? And this is something very critical, I think, in every in a relationship when you get in. If you don't have similar lifestyles, or if you're not in a somewhat, I would say, very similar idea of a vision of future, then the relationship
no matter how
work.
much attraction there is, if it does not align on those levels, it's doomed.
I don't have a typical lifestyle. So I work a job, I have a business, I have a son. I have a social life. I have my own personal shit going on. I'm building something. I don't want to have a 9-to-5 kind of life. I want to travel the world. I want to see the world. I want to be in nature. I'm all over the fucking place. So if I would go with a man who just likes to work from 9 to 5 and play video games every evening and watch Netflix, I'm sorry, but then our lifestyles and vision of future is totally off. So there's no work. It's the same thing with, I work out almost every single day. I'm very, very, have high standards for my health, whatever it's mental, physical, spiritual, or emotional. So if you're not at least doing a little bit of that for yourself, then we're not on the same page. Then being together would not work. And we have to have those honest conversations. So for me, somebody who comes in and doesn't take care of themselves, sorry, this won't work. Because I'll be there doing my shit on the other end, and you're going to be pouting on the fucking couch because I'm not there with you. So it's about having those conversations and being honest with each other about those things.
The last 15 minutes or so, I always like to come up with problem solutions.
Yes.
Let's start with those. Let's start with the record, having the honest conversations. How does somebody start to have the honest conversation with themselves about what they want, either single to attract someone they want, or in a connection that they just don't know if they want anymore? What's the first step that somebody needs to do to recognize that there's a problem and I need to fix it?
Yeah, I think it's to ask ourselves the question. And my favorite tool, and the only one I talk about, is journaling. And then just, sit with yourself and ask yourself the question, first and foremost, what is the ideal, I would say, partnership that I desire? What would be the man or woman be? And who would I be? What would be my ideal self? And then what is missing? What is the things that are not there for myself? What are the standards I'm asking for the partner? Am I respecting those with myself? Is this something I ask also of myself? And then work on that fucking shit. If you want somebody, everybody has that standard. They want a nicely sculpted, whatever it's man or woman, they all want somebody who looks good. Do you actually look good? Because if you don't look good or feel good about your body, I'm sorry, how are you going to attract somebody who likes or takes care of their own body? Doesn't make sense. And this is a confronting probably conversation, because we see, unfortunately, a lot of unhealthy talk about that. But I think it starts with having that honest conversation. I cannot ask my man to be a Greek god, and I'm, I don't know what reference I could use, but if I don't ask myself to be a goddess, right. It doesn't make sense. So we have to ask ourselves those honest And I like to do it through journaling, because journaling is a very personal, it's the actual place where you can have the conversation with your internal self and do it in a safe space. For me, it's the best place to start questioning and then see what comes up. And sometimes let it sit. I like to say to people, sit with the idea. That's what I do with my clients most of the time, is when they want to work on a problem, we ask those questions, they journal, they sit with it, they reflect on it. And then at some point, they do what needs to be done. Then we put actions into place, so then they can work towards that. Naturally, they do attract it. Naturally, it comes into their lives. I think that's how we do the thing for me. Anyways.
Is there a difference? How do people recognize a difference between boredom and a need for growth? A lot of couples, cheating is huge because they're bored, right? They need that emotion, of feeling of excitement they first had in their relationship. It's not the same, all this kind of stuff. That's got to be a trigger for growth, and that growth can contribute to a relationship. How can somebody maturely identify the difference between I'm bored or this is a calling to grow and change? And then is bored ever just bored? And that's a warning sign that somebody got involved with somebody for the wrong reasons and they got to go find somebody else.
I think that's, again, first and foremost, I think when boredom starts to enter the relationship, conversation needs to be happening with the partner. I think just saying like, hey, like I've been feeling like we're like in a routine and I don't feel like as excited as it used to. Why is that such a hard conversation to have? And
I'm not
saying that's easy. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying I'm an expert in that space, but it's like, why not have that conversation? Why not say, hey, like, what's happening here? Like, I see here, like, especially with the cheating part, like cheating is it's a very complex conversation because like from every situation it can be very different. I think when you start looking, I think for me, my personal point of view on that is when you start looking, you should start living like red flags here, because then it's the back door, the plan B kind of thing. It's that thing when instead of directing your attention, hey, like I'm not getting needs met, I need to communicate. And if it's a hard step to do, I also recommend journaling, questioning yourself, does this need come up? And also, the other one is not spicing things up. We're getting into routine, but you're still implicated in that space. How can you actually shift that routine differently and actually bring it to the place? And if the spouse actually reacts to it, then maybe a conversation needs to be had. Sometimes it starts with us. We feel bored. How can you spice it up? Like, I don't know. If my food is bland, I'll add salt. That's just how it works. Same thing, I think, with the relationship. We have to look at it from that space. But if communication doesn't elaborate into, a mutual understanding and wanting to grow, then maybe the question can revolve around, like, maybe that's not working. I think that starts there. Like, I think cheating became so easy, and because I feel sad about it. I never experienced it myself, not of my own knowing. But for me, it's not even something that remotely comes into my mind because I just don't believe in it. I would rather work hard to change things up. Like, okay, it's getting boring. Why is it getting boring? Have I actually contributed to be it boring? I know we kind of mentioned it yesterday together on my podcast. And then asking yourself that question. And then it's like, how could I be creative and create something new, or just, spice it up, or whatever it is? Do I buy a new lingerie kit, or do I, do something, like surprise him with something? Like, there's so many ways. It's just that people stop being creative, and it's easier to look at, porn on fucking internet instead of actually bringing the porn into the fucking, like bring it in the bedroom if that is needed. But it's about having that honest conversation with self.
Those are we could spiderweb off into so many different conversations about that. and we'll do another one in the future.
For sure. I'm ready.
Because it's like how many people just, it's communication's the key. Well, then how can you communicate that the reason why you're not having sex with your partner is because you're having emotional issues or personal issues or physical issues, and then that partner takes it. There's so many branches for this, and I never really appreciated how communication is absolutely everything. People, trust is the most important thing in a relationship. Money, laughter, sex. No, communication. If you are not communicating,
I think communication is the bridge of everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's the bridge of the trust. It's the bridge of the loyalty. It's the bridge of the growth. It's the bridge of the love. It's the bridge of the whatever. Like it's the bridge. It's what connects everything together. Because without it, and like we all have to learn, because we've not been learning communication enough. That's my opinion. And I myself am always learning in that space. And I think this is how we should approach it, to learn more how to communicate, and that serves in every type of relationship.
All right. Sum it up in the last couple of minutes we have here. What's the most important thing you can convey when it comes down to the masculine and feminine energies inside of a person?
I think it's about accepting that you have both. And also what I do recommend and couldn't talk more about is learn about them yourself. Get to understand them in your own behavior, in your own thoughts, in your own self, and accept them, learn from them, grow from them. They're great opportunities also to evolve or even to lean on when necessary, because there's weakness, but there's also strength in them. And it's about understanding and just getting to know them, connect with them.
And if people want more information, how can they wind up connecting with you to start this journey?
Of course, you can find me on Instagram at Anna, Buteau, Buteau. You can find it with the same names on TikTok and Facebook. These are my main platforms.
There we go. That was another great episode. We're going to do a third one, or a fourth one at that point. All right, guys. And God created. We're going to have more conversations. Hope you guys enjoyed this one, and we'll see you on the next episode.